I'm going to be covering up some people's phones here. I hope I don't. Let me just say good morning to all of you, and I'm very, very proud to be here with my good friend Pat Toomey from my sister state of Pennsylvania and West Virginia. We're side by side, and we come from states that have deep-rooted cultures, as you know, and we believe very strongly in that. I also want to give special thanks to two people who aren't here today, who have been invaluable to this process and have worked from the beginning trying to find common ground, and that is Senator Chuck Schumer, my good friend, and my dear friend Mark Kirk. Mark has been with me from the beginning and has never left, and Chuck and his staff and all of them who've worked so hard. I thank everybody, because as Pat will tell you, the staffs do yeoman's job. I also want to thank Tom Coburn. Tom has been invaluable to the process, also coming from the culture we come from, and has had great input all the way through this process. I want to make it clear from the start that this is a start, and it's not the end of our work. We still have a lot to do. We have an agreement, Pat and I have an agreement with Senator Kirk and Senator Schumer. We have an agreement on an amendment to prevent criminals and the mentally ill and insane from getting firearms and harming people. That's extremely important for all of us. Also, we agree that we need a commission on mass violence, and this commission is going to be made up with people with expertise. People who have expertise in guns, people who have expertise in mental illness, people who have expertise in school safety, and people who have expertise in video violence. We have a culture of violence, and we have a whole generation who basically has been desensitized. And if you go around and talk to the young people today, it just is what it is, and we've got to find out how we can change and reverse that. We also need to protect legal gun owners like myself and Pat, who basically cherish the Second Amendment rights that we have. And we have done that also. But today is just the start of a healthy debate that must end with the Senate and House hopefully passing these common sense measures and the President signing it into law. Back home where I come from, we have common sense, we have nonsense, and now we have gun sense. And that's what we're talking about. The events at Newtown, truly the events at Newtown changed us all. It changed our country, our communities, our towns, and it changed our hearts and minds. This amendment won't ease the pain. It will not ease the pain of the families who lost their children on that horrible day. But nobody here, and I mean not one of us, in this great capital of ours, with a good conscience, could sit by and not try to prevent a day like that from happening again. And I think that's what we're doing. Americans on both sides of the debate can and must find common ground. That's what Pat and I have been working on, what we've been able to do. Today's agreement is a first step in a common ground that all of us agree is crucial to keep guns out of dangerous hands and to keep our children safe. This is a bipartisan movement. It's a bipartisan amendment, and we all know that a bipartisan solution is a lasting solution. But nobody here in good conscience could sit by and not try to prevent a day that has happened at Newtown from ever happening again. I can't say enough about my friend, Pat Toomey, and I just appreciate him so much for working as hard and his staff doing what they've done, and for us all coming together today. So with that, I'd like to introduce to you my dear friend, Pat Toomey, from the great state of Pennsylvania. Pat?
Thank you very much, Senator Manchin. I too want to commend Senator Manchin for the great work that he's put in for a long time on this. Our staffs have worked very hard as well, and I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure working for you. We're going to continue to work together, I hope, on many things. I also want to mention the terrific work that Senator Kirk has done on this. He's really been an invaluable asset and a very, very important voice in this discussion, and I appreciate that. Let me say, Pennsylvania has a long bipartisan tradition of supporting gun rights, and I've been proud to be a part of that tradition, and I continue to be. I'm a gun owner, and the rights that are enshrined in the Second Amendment are very, very important to me personally, as I know they are to so many people across Pennsylvania. My record shows this. I've got to tell you candidly, I don't consider criminal background checks to be gun control. I think it's just common sense. If you pass a criminal background check, you get to buy a gun. It's no problem. It's the people who fail a criminal or a mental health background check that we don't want having guns. Now, in my time in public life, I've not taken a very high-profile role on this issue. I spend most of my time and energy focusing on policies that will help generate economic growth and job creation and put us on a sustainable fiscal path. That has been my focus. It'll continue to be my focus. So let me explain to you why I'm standing here today with Senator Manchin. I'm here because over the last few months, several things became apparent to me. First is that gun legislation appeared destined to reach the Senate floor. It's not something that I sought, but it's something that I think is inevitable. Second thing is, it became apparent that there are a number of gun control proposals that I think actually would infringe Second Amendment rights. And I will tell you categorically that nothing in our amendment prevents the ownership of guns by any lawful person, and I wouldn't support it if it did. But what also became apparent to me in the course of this debate, there was the danger that we might end up accomplishing nothing and not making progress where we could. So that's when I started talking with Senator Manchin and Senator Kirk and others to see if we might be able to find a place where there's some common ground. And I think we found it. And the common ground rests on a simple proposition, and that is that criminals and the dangerously mentally ill shouldn't have guns. I don't know anyone who disagrees with that premise, from either political party or whatever folks' views might be on broader gun rights issues. So if we start with the notion that dangerous criminals and dangerously mentally ill people shouldn't have guns, the question is, how can we accomplish that? Now, background checks are not a cure-all by any means, but they can be helpful. In the 10-year period from 1999 to 2009, 1.8 million gun sales were blocked by the current background check system because people were not qualified to own a gun. Now, I've supported background checks in the past. I support them now. They already exist, of course, for the purchase of guns from licensed dealers. In Pennsylvania, in fact, they already exist for all handgun purchases. If it passes, what our measure will do, it'll expand background checks to purchases of firearms at gun shows and over the internet. It would not require record keeping by any private citizens. Now, the fact is, the national law that we have had and Pennsylvania's experience have done nothing to restrict the lawful ownership of guns by law-abiding citizens, and neither will our amendment. The worries that we hear sometimes about background checks leading to an erosion of our Second Amendment rights, it simply hasn't happened. And we've got to make sure that it doesn't. I also should point out, as Senator Manchin did, that this amendment is a genuine compromise. In addition to expanding background checks, it includes a number of measures that help to secure Second Amendment rights of gun owners, some items that gun owners have long sought. The bottom line for me is this. If expanding background checks to include gun shows and internet sales can reduce the likelihood of criminals and mentally ill people from getting guns, and we can do it in a fashion that does not infringe on the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens, then we should do it. And in this amendment, I think we do. Thanks very much.
What we'll do is we'll take some questions and you can direct them however you want to direct them.
Senators, can you tell us how you have communicated with the NRA, what discussions you've had, and do you expect they will have an opinion, supportive or not supportive of your amendment?
I can't speak for the NRA, but yes, I've been in constant dialogue, and I'm sure that Pat has too. We've taken all sides into consideration. You know, when you have Senator Schumer coming to the table, wanting to see something progressively turn to move in the right direction, and also the direction he may come from, but be able to work and sit down with us and with me from the beginning, have Mark Kirk sit down from the beginning and work through, have the NRA sitting there, all people on all sides of the gun issue, knowing that all, and what Pat has said is all we're trying to do is basically saying that if you go to a gun store today, you're subjected to a background check. Basically, a lot of the states haven't done the work they should have done. We're going to make sure they do. There's incentives and there's penalties. And then next of all, if you go to a gun show, you'll be treated the same as if you went to a gun store, subjected to a background check. And then if you go online, you'll be subjected the same as you are if you buy a gun online in another state. So those are all the things we're doing. But yes, we brought everybody to the table. Yes, we've spoken to the NRA, and I cannot tell you what their position is, but I can tell you we've done the things that Pat just said we did. We strengthened, basically, the rights of law-abiding gun owners like myself and Pat to be able to exercise our Second Amendment right. But we've also, I think, done a tremendous favor to the citizens of our great country on background checks, expanding them to keep people's guns from people that shouldn't have them. People have been criminally adjudicated and mentally adjudicated.
Senators, are you worried that you are doing this, Senator Toomey, that you're doing this and you could risk your A rating from the NRA? Does that matter to you?
What matters to me is doing the right thing, and I think this is the right thing. And I think most Pennsylvanians will agree that making it more difficult for criminals and mentally ill people to obtain guns is the right thing to do. Securing the rights of law-abiding citizens is also the right thing to do. So that's what's most important to me.
Senator, can you give me any assurances that your rating will not change?
Let me just say,
can I ask you, are you going to get more Republicans on this amendment beyond yourself and Senator Cook? Do you believe you can attract other Republicans?
I've had conversations with several of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, but I can't speak for them yet. I think it's too soon to know how people are going to vote on this.
Senator Manchin, do you have
hold on right there and I'll come right to you.
Do you have confirmation from Senator Reid that this amendment will indeed be included in the bill that gets on the floor?
We have been promised and confirmed that our amendment will be the first amendment that goes on the bill.
Okay, and secondly, does this inclusion of this amendment in the bill guarantee that at least the two of you will vote for this bill on final passage and will encourage others to do so?
I intend to support it with this. I cannot support it without the amendment that Pat and I have worked on.
I don't predict how I'm going to vote on a measure that isn't defined yet. And since this might very well, and I hope it will be, an open amendment process, I don't know which amendments will succeed or fail, so I'll make my final judgment when I see the final product.
Senator, can you talk about what the reaction has been to your plan from your fellow Republicans? What have they said to you?
Well, it's ranged. I mean, there are some people that are very interested in learning more, and they're interested, and they are openly considering whether they might embrace this approach. Others are not very interested. It kind of runs the gamut.
Yes, right back here.
Are you exempting all private sales or just some private sales? So in other words, if two people who don't know each other, can they transfer a gun without their home?
Let me make it very clear. What we have done, if you go to a gun show, that's tight. You have to do all background checks and have to be recorded with an FFL, a federal firearms licensed dealer. The same as you do if you go to the gun store, that would be a licensed dealer. If you go online, the same. Other than that, no. Personal transfers are not touched whatsoever. All personal transfers are not touched whatsoever. We've done these two, and we've done them and done them right.
Can I follow up on that?
Yes.
Senator Toomey, you mentioned that there were items in there that were expanding gun rights, and I want to hear more about that.
The way I would characterize it is securing gun rights. I think we've distributed a list. I'll give you a couple of examples. It occasionally happens that a law-abiding citizen who has every legal right to own a weapon is transporting it from one state to another. Maybe he's going hunting. Yeah. Maybe he's bringing it to his son or daughter. He's transporting it in the proper fashion, but he has to transit a state that might require a license, for instance. He doesn't have the license in that state, and sometimes that person, maybe he has to stop for gas or stay overnight in a hotel. That person shouldn't be subject to criminal prosecution when he is doing something that's really completely lawful. A second example I'll give you, and there are others. Current law forbids active duty military personnel from buying a gun in their own state. I think that's terrible policy, frankly. They are only permitted to buy a gun in the state in which they are stationed. What we would do is we would change that, and we would allow an active duty military folks to buy a gun in their home state. So that's just two examples. There are others.
I have right back here, and I'll be right here.
Both senators, in the past you've expressed and you've worked for national concealed carry reciprocity. You've touched upon a little bit, Senator Toomey. Is this the first step towards national reciprocity for concealed carry for you?
Yes. Yes.
I support it. I hope we get there.
It gives us a better control, if you will. It really gives us much better control. And basically, it treats people fair. You can't look. If Pat and I and so many of you all who are probably law-abiding legal gun owners and enjoy going hunting and shooting like we do, we can't assume that people, because we enjoy that the Second Amendment rights that we have, that there's something wrong. But we will make sure we do it in a safe manner and we treat it fairly. With that, this goal is to make sure that the people that shouldn't have them are not going to have access to the guns through a gun show, an internet sales, or as a gun store that we do now.
And so there would be a process for, like, there's about 700 people picked up in LaGuardia and JFK airports who inadvertently are carrying guns as they travel. This bill would create a mechanism so that they wouldn't be caught in that trap.
Well, if they have a permit to carry and they go through a much extensive background check to get a permit to carry, concealed carry, then they would be treated as law-abiding citizens and not as criminals just because they happen to have it and be in a state that doesn't accept that. I'm sorry, right?
What do you think the prospects are for this amendment on the Senate floor, and should the Senate pass something, what are the prospects in the House?
My answer is I don't know. I'm looking forward to the debate. I'm hopeful, but I think this is a fluid situation and it's hard to predict.
Let me just say this. I have spoken this morning with all of my friends in the gun state of West Virginia, the gun culture of West Virginia, the people who appreciate and enjoy the rights that they have. And I explained by detail what the bill does. And I think I have support from who would be the most critical gun advocates as anybody in the country. They understand this is common sense. This is gun sense. We're not infringing on their rights as an individual citizen. But basically, if you're going to go to a gun show, you should be subjected the same as if you went to the gun store. If you're going to go online, you should be the same as if you bought the gun across state lines, the same as if you were in-state, intrastate versus interstate. All we're saying, this makes sense. And also having a commission on mass violence. Talk to your children who are watching these video games today. Talk to the people at Newtown. Basically, if we'd have had just bulletproof glass, could we have prevented? These are things we never took into consideration before. There's so many things for school safety and video violence and mental illness. Why aren't we treating mental illness? Why are we having
Let's
that?
let Colby
Yeah.
ask the last question.
Have
Yeah.
you reached out to any House Republicans, perhaps some of the Republicans in the Philadelphia suburbs or the Lehigh Valley, about supporting this amendment?
I have had several conversations with some of our House colleagues, and I know there are a substantial number of House Republicans that are supportive of this general approach. Of course, they want to look at the specifics of the legislation, but there are definitely Republicans in the House who support this. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much. We'll be talking about it.
Senators Manchin and Toomey, announcing their amendment to the gun legislation, which would broaden background checks for firearms purchases. On the Senate floor, they are in preliminary consideration of a motion to advance the bill to the Senate floor for debate, a possible and likely vote actually on Thursday. 60 votes will be needed to cut off debate. Senator Manchin saying in that news conference that their proposed amendment would be, it was confirmed their amendment would be considered first if that is brought to the House, or the Senate floor rather. And of course you can follow the Senate on C-SPAN too. We've been following